entertaining talking sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to dive into the big news of the day in the NFC East, of course. And we're going to kind of tie it into the New York Giants, being that they both selected a quarterback in the same year. But the Washington football team today went out there and they not only benched, they made him the third-string quarterback, Dwayne Haskins. And maybe there's more to this story. We're going to have to wait and see. Maybe it's a punishment. Maybe Haskins did something that has not come out with the media. It's all very possible because it's very peculiar that you would do it off the week that Dwayne Haskins had last week. And granted, I don't get to watch every game. And by no means am I saying that Dwayne Haskins is a finished product. But last week, against a very good defense, you're talking about the Baltimore Ravens, one of the best defenses the sport has to offer. Dwayne Haskins didn't turn the ball over. He had 0 interceptions, no touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He had a 71% completion percentage. He was 32 for 45. He threw for 314 yards. And so far this year, well, yes, the results have been underwhelming. It's not like he's been abysmal. He's got 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And in 3 of his games, he didn't throw a pick. In one game, he threw 3 picks against the Cleveland Browns. I am dumbfounded at this decision, unless, of course, it is something that he's being punished for because he did something wrong off the field or on the field. Maybe they feel like he's not practicing properly. I suppose all that's possible. Now, of course, there was speculation when the year started with Washington that they may look to start Kyle Allen when they brought in Ron Rivera because he was more familiar with the scheme that they were trying to institute. And Washington may be looking at the NFC East and they may be saying to themselves, we're 1-3. We feel like Kyle Allen or Alex Smith, if Alex Smith ultimately gets the opportunity, gives us the best opportunity to win football games. And we feel like this is an open division and we could go out and win it. But my opinion, even if Washington were to win this division stinks, so they could. Say they win 6 or 7 games, they win the NFC East. What are they really going to do at the end of the day? They're not winning a Super Bowl this year. They're probably not going to even win a playoff game if they make it. I recognize that they have an emerging pass rush, but Alex Smith ain't winning you a Super Bowl. Kyle Allen ain't winning you a Super Bowl, and that is ultimately what the prize is about. And to me, if I was a Washington football fan and I used a first-round pick, 15th overall on a quarterback, I would want to give him every opportunity to see if he could potentially one day be that quarterback that could get me to the promised land. And right now, they're not doing that. And yeah, a lot of Giants fans are going to rag on this and they're going to say that Dwayne Haskins sucks. And so far in his career, he hasn't been good. I think he's got 1 more touchdown than 1 interception. But let's take everything into account here. Dwayne Haskins had 13 collegiate starts. Dwayne Haskins was rushed into the starting lineup. The Washington football team was never on the same page. You had an owner that forced a quarterback pick. It came out after the fact that Gruden never wanted to take him. As a matter of fact, he wanted to take Daniel Jones. You then forced him on the football team. And not only that, and I recognize there's some factors to this because there was an injury at the quarterback position, but Dwayne Haskins should have never been starting when he did. They rushed him in. He wasn't ready. And he struggled because of it. You started to see him play a little bit better down the stretch, and this year, he's been mediocre. But let's take it all into account. The guy has played now 12 starts in the NFL, 8 in one scheme, 4 in the other. He's played in 2 different schemes. He had 13 collegiate starts. He's got no weapons to speak of outside of Terry McLaurin. His offensive line is horrible. What in the world did Washington expect from this kid? And it appears, if this is the case and they're just moving on, that Dwayne Haskins will not be the quarterback going forward. And you would think that if Washington finishes high enough, they will be in the market for a quarterback. But this is what bad organizations do. They set their players up for failure, and they never really give them an opportunity at success. Dwayne Haskins never had an opportunity at success. Never. And I look at the Buffalo Bills. I said this in my Discord as soon as I heard about this. The Buffalo Bills, when they drafted Josh Allen was thought to be a project, much like Haskins. Haskins was an underdeveloped prospect, didn't have a lot of collegiate experience. They both looked inaccurate at times, and I'm not saying that he has all the raw physical abilities of Josh Allen, because Josh Allen has a cannon for an arm. He's more mobile than Haskins, but he looked like a horrible quarterback his first year in the NFL. And last year, through the first half, he didn't look that great either. Then you started to see him get better. And now this year, he's really taking off. But Buffalo did it the right way. They were patient with their young prospect. They built the offensive line, something that Washington refused to do in the second year. Didn't build up that offensive line. As a matter of fact, you could probably argue it got worse. They got him weapons. They ended up getting John Brown for him. They ended up getting Beasley, and they got Stephon Diggs. Washington, outside of McLaurin, who was a third or fourth round pick, didn't do that. and they set him up for success, and now you're seeing it start to pay off, and that is what good organizations do. When you invest a first-round pick in a quarterback, and the Bills drafted him right around where the Washington drafted Haskins, you do everything in your power to make that be successful. You don't have this microwave mentality and get rid of him at the first sign of stress. That's not the way it works at the quarterback position, and that's not the way it used to be. And I do not like this changing of the guard where people expect quarterbacks to just step in regardless of the situation they're in and just be great. That's not the way it works. And I'm not telling you, maybe Haskins would have been a complete bust. We'll never know. But to give this kid 12 starts, that's not enough time to evaluate, especially because you made him learn 2 different schemes and you gave him no weapons. And it's eerily similar to the situation I talk about with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was much more prepared than Haskins was. He played, I think, 3 or 4 years as a starter, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 3 years at Duke. He had a lot more college experience. He had the same coach, who obviously tutored, Eli and Peyton Manning. And I think that, paid dividends in terms of his readiness in his rookie year. He was much more prepared than Dwayne Haskins was, and Jones definitely showed some signs as to being a guy that could potentially be a franchise quarterback. And now this year, of course, he's struggling. And, I pointed to some factors. Of course, some of it definitely falls on Jones, but the new scheme, the weapons, similar to what Dwayne Haskins is dealing with. And I recognize eventually you have to overcome this, but you got to give this guy a lot more time to evaluate than 4 games into his second year where he's learning a new scheme in which he's only had 12 starts. That's a disaster. And I know Giants fans now are going to start to say, should we bring in Colt McCoy? What the hell does Colt McCoy do for this football team? The guy's got 5 wins in his entire career. He's like 30. He's never going to be a guy that's going to be a franchise quarterback. What is he going to do? Help you win a couple of meaningless games where you're not going to be competing for a Super Bowl? You're probably not making the playoffs? Doesn't make sense at all. You need to use this year to evaluate the young talent you have at the quarterback position. You invested the 6th overall pick in him. You got to give him every opportunity to succeed before you come to the conclusion that you need to move on or not. That's why I think Washington is making a huge mistake here by moving on from Dwayne Haskins as quickly as they did. And I think to be honest with you, I think they look really bad as an organization. That's just my humble opinion. Like I said, things may come out. Maybe there's more to this story. Maybe this is a punishment. Maybe they'll give him an opportunity to come back in. But regardless, it screws with your quarterback's head. And I don't know all the ins and outs in that organization. But to only give the guy 12 starts, to give him the situation that you did, you set him up for failure. And that is what the worst organizations do. Sam Darnold, perfect example. Sam Darnold to me is a quarterback that has a lot of talent. You talk to any professional scout. Sam Darnold had a ton of talent. What did the Jets do? They waited till his 3rd year to get him an offensive line. They hired Adam Gase. He's got no weapons to speak of. These guys are not set up for success. And yes, there are 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks that can overcome that, but most can't. That doesn't mean that you can't win with quarterbacks like that, but you need to have the right structure in place, similar to what the Buffalo Bills did for Josh Allen. And the New York Giants and the Washington football team, at least to this point, have not done that for their quarterbacks. But for Washington to move on as quickly as they did, it's just sad, to be honest with you. I feel bad for Dwayne Haskins. He never had a fighting chance with that football team. And I hope for his sake that he gets an opportunity somewhere else if he does not get another opportunity with Washington. Because I do think he had some skills, but he just wasn't ready. And he shouldn't have came out when he did. Should have waited another year. That was a mistake on his part. And think about this. If Haskins goes back to college, the whole reason why I think that he came out was because he thought he'd go higher in the draft. Let's say he goes back to college, and let's say he goes late first round because you had guys like Tua and Burrow in this draft. What if he ends up with the Green Bay Packers? Think how much different his career could have turned out. Let's put him in the spot of Jordan Love. He sits and learns behind Aaron Rodgers for 2 or 3 years, hones his game, and he becomes a very good quarterback. To me, the NFL has as much or even more to do with the situation you're placed in at the quarterback position than anything else. And Dwayne Haskins and Daniel Jones, at least up to this point, have not been in the right situation. As a New York Giants fan, I am hoping and praying that we give Daniel Jones every opportunity this year to prove he's the guy. And if he doesn't, and we're picking first, well, then we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But we have to give Daniel Jones a lot more time than the Washington gave Dwayne Haskins. Because quite frankly, that is not enough time to evaluate a quarterback, especially in the circumstances that both of these individuals were put in. But that's just my opinion. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.